At 0230 hours on the 2nd of August 1943, Harold Marnie screams. Ship at 2:00. The dark shape emerges from the black night 300 yards off PT 109's starboard bow. Lieutenant Junior Grade John Fitzgerald Kennedy thinks it is another PT boat. So does everyone on the bridge. They are wrong. The shape is Japanese destroyer Amagiri, 2,000 tons, 420 feet long, 30 knots. She is returning from Vila on Kolombangara after delivering 912 soldiers and supplies. She is heading home to Rabaul. PT 109 is directly in her path. Kennedy signals the engine room for full power. He spins the wheel hard to starboard. He wants to turn toward the destroyer, to present a smaller target, to bring his torpedoes to bear. There is not enough time. The engines do not respond. PT 109 is running on one engine at idle. The mufflers are closed. When Kennedy orders full power, the engines stall. They always stall when throttled up with mufflers closed. Every PT skipper knows this. Kennedy knows this. In the panic of the moment, he forgets. 10 seconds. From sighting to impact. 10 seconds. Amagiri's slanted smokestack is visible now. The bow wave towers above the tiny PT boat. The destroyer cannot turn, cannot slow. The collision is inevitable. At 0231, Amagiri strikes PT 109 just forward of the forward starboard torpedo tube. The destroyer's bow slices through the wooden hull like an axe through kindling. The starboard aft side is ripped away. The fuel tanks explode. Gasoline sprays across the water. Flames erupt everywhere. Kennedy is thrown around the cockpit. His back, already injured from years of football and sailing, slams against the instrument panel. The impact will plague him for the rest of his life. Radioman John Maguire is hurled into the water. So is most of the crew. Below decks, motor machinist mate first class Patrick McMahon is in the engine room when the fuel explodes. He is engulfed in flames, his face, his hands, his arms. He escapes through a hatch. He jumps into the burning water. Amagiri's wake disperses the flames. The destroyer disappears into the darkness. She never slows. Her captain may not have known he hit anything. Or he may have assumed the PT boat was destroyed. Either way, Amagiri continues toward Rabaul. She arrives hours later. Damage to her propeller will require repairs, but she is operational. PT 109 is cut in half. The stern section sinks immediately. 2 men die, torpedoman second class Andrew Kirksey, motor machinist, mate second class Harold Marnie. 11 men survive. PT 109 was an 80-foot Elco motor torpedo boat. PT 103 class, hull number PT 109, built by Electric Boat Company, Bayonne, New Jersey. Keel laid March 4, 1942. Launched June 20th, delivered to Navy July 10th, fitted out at New York Naval Shipyard, Brooklyn. Commissioned August 12, 1942. Standard displacement 40 tons. Full load displacement 56 tons. Length 80 feet. Beam 20 feet 8 inches. Draft 5 feet. 3 Packard 12-cylinder 4 M2500 gasoline engines. 1,200 horsepower each. 3,600 total shaft horsepower. 3 screws. Maximum speed 41 knots. Range 500 nautical miles at cruising speed. Crew 3 officers, 14 enlisted men. Standard complement 12 to 14. Hull construction was mahogany. 2 layers of 1-inch mahogany planking laid diagonally over laminated spruce, white oak, and mahogany frames. A layer of airplane fabric impregnated with marine glue was ironed between the 2 planking layers. The result was light, strong, resilient. But it provided minimal protection in combat. A wooden hull could not withstand gunfire, could not stop shells, could not survive collision with steel warships. PT boats relied on speed and maneuverability for protection. They attacked at night. They launched torpedoes. They fled at maximum speed. They were not designed to fight surface ships in close combat. Original armament varied. 4 21-inch Mark 8 torpedo tubes. Each torpedo weighed approximately 1 ton. 2 twin 50-caliber machine gun turrets. 1 20mm Oerlikon cannon at the stern. Later boats carried 40mm Bofors cannon. Some boats received field modifications. 37mm anti-tank guns. Rocket launchers. Additional machine guns. PT-109 had been modified the day before her final mission. Kennedy's crew lashed a 37mm Army anti-tank gun to the foredeck. They removed the wheels. They secured it to timbers. The gun replaced a small 2-man life raft. This decision would later save lives. The timbers became flotation devices. The day before the collision, PT-109 also took aboard 2 depth charges. These were rarely carried on PT boats. One was mounted on each side of the boat, directly in front of the torpedo launchers. During a storm days earlier, the port depth charge had been accidentally launched. It punched through the foredeck. The hole was patched, but the boat was compromised. She was damaged. She should have been withdrawn for repairs. She was not. The Solomons campaign was desperate. Every boat was needed. PT-109 remained on duty. On August 1, 1943, naval intelligence decoded Japanese signals. 5 enemy destroyers would run supplies to Villa on Kolombangara that night. This was the Tokyo Express. Japanese destroyers made high-speed runs through the slot, delivering troops and supplies to isolated garrisons. They operated at night. American PT boats operated at night to intercept them. It was cat and mouse in darkness. Usually the cat won. 15 PT boats sortied from Rendova Island. They formed picket lines across likely Japanese routes. PT-109 was part of Division B. Lieutenant Hank Brantingham commanded the division. His boat had radar. PT-109 did not. At approximately 2200 hours, the PT boats took position in Blackett Strait. Between Kolombangara and Arundel Islands, the night was profoundly dark. Starless, moonless, visibility near zero. Around midnight, Brantingham in PT-159 spotted Japanese destroyers. He closed to attack. He did not send radio report. He was operating under radio silence. The other PT boats did not know the enemy had been engaged. They did not know the Tokyo Express had already completed its mission. They did not know the destroyers were returning to Rabaul at high speed. PT-109 idled on one engine. Kennedy was trying to avoid detection. The engine noise and wake could be spotted by Japanese aircraft. Earlier that week, a PT officer had been killed by air attack. Kennedy ran one engine at low speed. The mufflers were closed. This reduced noise, but it also meant the engines could not quickly accelerate. If danger approached, the boat needed time to open mufflers, start other engines, and reach full speed. In darkness with limited visibility, warning time was minimal. At 0230, Amagiri appeared. Kennedy had no warning, no radio alert from other PT boats, no radar, no indication Japanese ships were nearby. The destroyer was 300 yards away when Marnie spotted it. Kennedy reacted instinctively. He ordered full power. He turned towards the threat. But the engines stalled. The mufflers were still closed. Motor machinist mate Patrick McMahon received the order. He tried to comply. With mufflers closed, opening throttles stalled the engines. This was known. This was documented. This had happened to other boats. Kennedy knew it. McMahon knew it. In the emergency, there was no time to open mufflers first. The order was given. The engines stalled. Amagiri struck. After the collision, Kennedy clung to the floating forward section. 5 men were with him. Ensign Lenny Tom, Seaman First Class Raymond Albert, Radioman Second Class John Maguire, Quartermaster Third Class Edgar Maurer, Ensign George Ross. 6 other men were in the water. Kennedy called out. He heard responses. He ordered everyone to swim to the floating wreckage. It took 3 hours. Motor machinist mate Patrick McMahon was badly burned. He could barely move. Kennedy dove into the water. He swam to McMahon. He took the strap of McMahon's life jacket in his teeth. He towed him to the wreck. 100 yards, 3 hours in darkness. Gunner's mate Charles Harris was wounded. Kennedy helped him. All 11 survivors reached the floating bow section. They clung to it. They waited for dawn. The wreckage drifted. At dawn, land was visible, several miles away. The survivors held council. They could not stay with the wreckage. It would drift into Japanese-controlled waters. It would be spotted. They needed to reach land. But the nearest islands were occupied. Japanese garrisons were everywhere. They needed to find a small island, uninhabited, where they could hide. Kennedy chose Plum Pudding Island. Tiny, 100 yards diameter, no visible Japanese presence. It was 3.5 miles away. The survivors lashed together timbers from the wrecked gun mount. They placed their shoes, lantern, and non-swimmers on the timber raft. They began kicking. Kennedy towed McMahon again, the life jacket strap in his teeth. McMahon could not swim with his burns. The journey took 4 hours. They kicked through shark-infested waters, through currents, through exhaustion. They reached Plum Pudding Island around noon on August 2nd. The island had no food, no water, only sand and scrub. The men hid in the vegetation. Japanese barges passed regularly. The survivors could not risk being seen. They had no weapons, no radio, no way to signal rescue. Kennedy decided to swim to Ferguson Passage. PT boats patrolled there at night. If he could reach the passage, he might signal a passing boat, attract attention, arrange rescue. On the night of August 2nd, Kennedy swam alone. 2 miles through darkness. He carried a lantern wrapped in a life jacket. He reached Ferguson Passage. He waited. No PT boats appeared. American forces had withdrawn after the disastrous night action. No boats were patrolling. Kennedy waited until dawn. Then he swam back. He was exhausted. He nearly drowned in the current. He washed up on Plum Pudding Island barely conscious. On August 4th, the situation was desperate. No food, no water. The men were dehydrated, starving. Kennedy decided to move to another island. Olasana Island, 3.75 miles south, visible from Plum Pudding. Olasana had coconut trees, maybe water. The swim was brutal, against strong current. Kennedy towed McMahon again. All 11 men made it. Olasana had coconuts, still no fresh water, but coconuts provided some hydration, some nutrition. It was not enough. On August 5th, Kennedy and Ensign Ross swam to Nauru Island, half a mile southeast, closer to Ferguson Passage. Nauru might have water, might have food, might have better position to signal passing boats. They found a small canoe hidden in bushes. They found a keg of water, Japanese supplies. They found crackers. They stayed on Nauru overnight. On August 6th, Kennedy woke to find 2 Solomon Islanders watching him. Byuku Gasa and Ironi Kumana, native scouts for Australian Coastwatcher Sub-Lieutenant Arthur Reginald Evans. Evans manned secret observation post atop volcano on Kolombangara. He had seen the explosion on August 2nd. He decoded signals indicating PT-109 was missing. He dispatched Gasa and Kumana to search for survivors. Kennedy needed to communicate with Evans. He needed to request rescue. He had no radio, no signal equipment. He carved a message on a coconut shell. Green coconut, fresh. The message read, Noro Island. Commander, native knows position. He can pilot. 11 alive. Need small boat. Kennedy, Gasa, and Kumana paddled the message to Evans. 35 miles through Japanese-controlled waters. They traveled in darkness. They avoided Japanese patrols. They reached Evans' post on Kolombangara. Evans radioed the message to PT base at Rendova. Preparations began for rescue. On August 7th, Kennedy was picked up by native scouts in a larger canoe. They took him to Rendezvous Point near Ferguson Passage. PT-157 and PT-171 approached. Kennedy stood in the canoe to give pre-arranged signal. 4 shots. His revolver had only 3 rounds. He borrowed a rifle from the scouts for the 4th shot. The recoil threw him off balance. He fell in the water. The PT boats pulled him aboard. They proceeded to Olasana. All 11 survivors were rescued. The rescue was completed early morning August 8th, 6 days after the collision. PT-109's crew had survived on coconuts and rainwater. They had swum miles through enemy waters. They had hidden on islands crawling with Japanese troops. They had endured dehydration, exhaustion, and injuries. All 11 lived. This was extraordinary. Most crews that lost their boats did not survive. The statistics were grim. PT-109's survival rate was anomalous. Kennedy received Navy and Marine Corps Medal for his actions. The citation noted he heroically rescued crew members after collision. He towed injured man through enemy waters. He swam repeatedly to find help. He displayed resourcefulness and leadership. His back injury from the collision plagued him. He spent months at Chelsea Naval Hospital. He would have back problems for the rest of his life. Multiple surgeries, chronic pain. But he survived. All his men survived. That mattered more than medals. The coconut shell became famous. Kennedy's father, Joseph Kennedy Sr., had it encased in plastic on a wooden base. John Kennedy used it as paperweight, first as congressman, then as senator, then as president. It sat on the Oval Office desk, the coconut from Nauru Island, the message that saved 11 men, the symbol of survival. The criticism came later. Other PT skippers questioned Kennedy's actions. Why was PT-109 running on one engine? Why were mufflers closed? Why did Kennedy not maintain better lookout? Why did he not know Japanese destroyers were in the area? Why did the engines stall? Was Kennedy at fault for the collision? Some argued Kennedy was negligent. He ran a slack ship. He failed to monitor radio. 2 other PT boats had sent warnings about the Tokyo Express. Kennedy's radio man was not below deck monitoring. He was in the cockpit with Kennedy and Tom. The radio was unmanned. The warnings were not received. Others argued Kennedy acted properly. His division was operating under radio silence. If radio traffic was banned, why monitor the radio? The collision happened too fast for any response. 10 seconds from sighting to impact. No skipper could have avoided it. The engine stalled because of design flaw, not operator error. PT boats routinely stalled when throttled up with mufflers closed. This was systemic problem, not individual failure. Kennedy's older brother Joe wrote a scathing letter. Joe Kennedy Jr. was Navy bomber pilot. He questioned John's command decisions. He asked where John was when the destroyer appeared. What were his moves? The criticism stung. The brothers were rivals. Joe was taller, healthier, more athletic. Their father had anointed Joe as future president. John was second choice. The PT-109 incident became ammunition in their rivalry. But the public narrative was different. John Hersey wrote an article for New Yorker in June 1944. The story of PT-109 became famous. Kennedy was portrayed as hero, the young lieutenant who saved his crew, who swam through shark waters, who never gave up. The article made Kennedy a war hero. It launched his political career. It shaped his image for decades. The truth was complicated. Kennedy made mistakes. He ran on one engine when he should have been at higher readiness. He did not monitor radio properly. He throttled up without opening mufflers. The collision might have been avoided with better procedures. But in the chaos of night combat in the Solomons, mistakes happened constantly. The entire night of August 1st through 2nd was a series of blunders. Multiple PT boats failed to coordinate. Communications broke down. Japanese destroyers completed their mission unopposed. One historian called it the most screwed-up PT boat action of World War II. But Kennedy's actions after the collision were exemplary. He kept his crew together. He towed wounded man for miles. He swam repeatedly through enemy waters. He found rescue. He refused to quit. This was leadership, not the combat leadership of preventing disaster, the survival leadership of managing disaster. When everything went wrong, Kennedy made it right. That was heroism. Kennedy returned to combat. He commanded PT-59, a gunboat conversion. He participated in rescue of 40 to 50 Marines during raid on Choiseul Island. On November 2, 1943, PT-59 came under fire. Japanese soldiers on beach fired on the boat. Kennedy and his crew rescued Marines and evacuated them. Kennedy received further commendations, but his back injury worsened. The collision damage combined with earlier football injuries required surgery. He was hospitalized December 1943, released March 1944, reassigned stateside. He never returned to combat. He was released from Navy in March 1945. Lieutenant rank, multiple decorations, war hero status, back injury that would plague him forever. In 1946, he ran for Congress from Massachusetts. He won. In 1952, he ran for Senate. He won. He used his war record extensively. The PT-109 story was told repeatedly. The coconut shell appeared in campaign materials. Kennedy was the war hero who saved his crew, the young officer who refused to quit, the survivor who brought everyone home. This image was powerful. It resonated with voters. It helped elect him. In 1960, he ran for president. He won. On January 20, 1961, he was inaugurated as 35th President of the United States. The coconut shell sat on his desk in the Oval Office. The submariners who pulled George Bush from the water off Chichijima walked in Bush's inauguration parade. Kennedy had no equivalent ceremony. The Solomon Islanders who saved him were not present. Byukugasa and Ironi Kumana were not invited to the inauguration. They remained in the Solomon Islands. They were scouts. They were heroes. But they were not part of the official narrative. Years later, Kennedy acknowledged them. He met them during his presidency. He thanked them. He gave them gifts. But they were footnotes in the PT-109 story. The focus was Kennedy's heroism, his swimming, his leadership, his survival. The narrative required American hero, not Solomon Islander scouts. This was typical of the era. Indigenous people who helped Allied forces were rarely acknowledged publicly. Their contributions were minimized. The white officers received medals. The native scouts received nothing. On November 22, 1963, President Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas. He was 46 years old, 20 years after the collision with Amagiri. The back injury from that collision had required multiple surgeries. He wore back brace. He took pain medication. The brace may have contributed to his death. After the first shot hit, the brace kept him upright. He could not slump down. The second shot struck his head. If he had collapsed after the first shot, the second shot might have missed. The coconut shell remained in the Kennedy Library. It is displayed next to other PT-109 artifacts, the flag from the boat, photographs of the crew. The message carved on the shell is still visible. Noro Iasla, commander. Native knows posit. He can pilot. 11 alive. Need small boat. Kennedy. 11 words that saved 11 men. In 2007, Robert Ballard led expedition to find PT-109. Using remote vehicles, the team located the forward section in Blackett Strait. The wreck lies where it sank. The aft section was never found. It sank immediately after the collision. The forward section drifted before sinking. The wreck is war grave. 2 men died with the boat. Andrew Kirksey, Harold Marney. They rest there still. The site is protected. No salvage is permitted. Byukugasa died February 1, 2005. Ironi Kumana died August 2, 2014, exactly 71 years after the collision. They were heroes. They risked their lives paddling through enemy waters. They delivered the coconut shell message. They saved 11 Americans. They received recognition late in life. But they received it. Kennedy's nephew presented bust of President Kennedy to their families. The coconut shell is displayed next to piece of custom money that Kumana gave to be placed on Kennedy's grave, the tribute of one chief to another. Kohei Hanami commanded Amagiri. In 1952, Representative Kennedy wrote him, "Kennedy was running for Senate. He wanted to contact the Japanese commander, to extend wishes of good fortune, to express hope for long-term peace between Japan and United States." Hanami responded. They corresponded. When Kennedy was inaugurated president, Hanami and Amagiri's crew sent congratulatory message. Former enemies acknowledging each other. The collision that made Kennedy a hero made Hanami a footnote in history. He served honorably. He commanded well. His destroyer completed her mission. But history remembers the American who survived, not the Japanese who struck. PT-109's story is American mythology. Young officer faces disaster, rises to challenge, saves his men, becomes hero, becomes president. The narrative is compelling. It is mostly true, but it omits complexity. The mistakes that led to collision, the systemic failures of PT boat doctrine, the contributions of Solomon Islanders, the role of his father in shaping the narrative, the political calculation in using war record for election. But mythology serves purpose, it inspires, it teaches. The lesson of PT-109 is not that Kennedy was perfect commander. The lesson is that when disaster strikes, leadership matters. Kennedy could have panicked. He could have saved himself. He could have abandoned his crew. He did none of these. He gathered his men. He kept them together. He found rescue. This was heroism, not the heroism of preventing disaster, the heroism of surviving disaster, the heroism of refusing to quit. 11 men went into the water on August 2nd, 1943. 11 men were rescued on August 8th. 2 men died in the collision, but 11 survived. This was Kennedy's achievement. Not avoiding the collision, surviving it, not preventing the disaster, managing it, not being perfect, being good enough when it mattered. That was leadership. That was heroism. That was why the coconut shell sat on the desk in the Oval Office, because it represented the moment when young Lieutenant refused to quit, when he swam through darkness, when he carved message on coconut, when he saved his crew. That moment defined him. That moment made him. That moment was PT-109.